Good afternoon, and I welcome you to Working for You. I am Les Roy Williams. I thank you very much for joining us for our program today. As usual, your company is very much appreciated wherever you are. Today we are going to be having a discussion on a very important topic, that of sustainable agriculture in challenging times. Of course, you know that we are still in the COVID-19 pandemic, and various sectors have been impacted significantly. The tourism sector, the agricultural sector has been impacted, but now we are seeing even more the need for the agricultural sector to have a sort of a boost and people to focus more on agriculture, because food security is important. We saw that when the pandemic just started, that was the concern of many people around the world. The whole idea of food security, whether they would have enough food and so on. We saw it here in our federation, of course, when people were wondering what is going to happen. Will we have enough to eat? And so on. And you saw that the panic buying, the people buying up stuff in supermarkets and so on, because they thought that there will be a food shortage. And that speaks to the whole importance, really, of food security. So while working to feed the world, many agricultural workers are unable to lift themselves out of poverty and food insecurity. As this pandemic spreads, the continued functioning of food supply chains is crucial in preventing a food crisis and reducing the negative impact on the global economy, the local economy, the regional economy. Coordinated policy responses are needed to support agribusiness and the livelihoods and working conditions of millions of agricultural workers in line with relevant international labor standards. Today, I am joined with two very competent persons who work in the agricultural sector, in the Ministry of Agriculture. I am joined by Mr. Melvin James, who is the Director in the Department of Agriculture, and Mr. Ian Chapman, who is Crops Program Leader in the Department of Agriculture. Gentlemen, welcome to this program.
Thank you. That's right.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, for having me here again on Working for You.
Right. Now, of course, we know that the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, has brought an awareness to us, heightened the awareness of the importance of food security. The tourism industry, really, you have seen the devastating impact that the pandemic has had on the tourism industry worldwide. And the tourism industry can be a very fragile industry. And we have to be able to feed ourselves. Food security becomes very important. Now, Mr. Chapman, this year, the United Nations has designated 2021 as the International Year of Fruits and Vegetables, which basically falls under the whole umbrella of agricultural production and so on. Now, what is the real purpose of this designation by the United Nations?
Good afternoon, Mr. Williams, and good afternoon again to the listening audience in the radio world and wherever you may be listening or watching us here today on Working for You. As you rightfully said, Mr. Williams, this year has been designated as the International Year of Fruits and Vegetables by the United Nations. And as we, as a federation, join with the rest of the world to commemorate this event and pay tribute to the work that our farmers are doing to adhere to the fresh foods and vegetable production and the livelihoods that it makes, the impact to our small farmers here in our federation, we know that a sustainable agricultural support approach to our ministry will ensure and make our food system more productive, and the environmentally benefits of the sustainable and resilient approach that our ministry is now trying to tackle this. Of course, we all know the whole lot of benefits of fruits and vegetables, and I could go into that a little later in my presentation, but coupled to the whole reasons why the whole United Nations would have been addressing or labeling this year to be what announced as the International Year of Fruits and Vegetables, you could see that lighten that the COVID-19 pandemic has really challenged our farmers, and by extension our extension services, to provide or find new ways of creating and improve our nutrition and our market opportunities to our people, because we know the COVID-19 pandemic, we need to transform and rebalance the way that food is produced here in the Federation, as you rightfully said, because in the early stages of the announcement of the COVID-19 pandemic, people were shopping like frenzy, and of course we at the department really thought that, wait, what if boats don't come? We really need to think about that, and how we'll be able to feed our people for our own resilience and sustainability of our, what you say, our country, our federation by extension. So with that, in this current health crisis we are facing the world, so we are really promoting healthy diets to strengthen our immune system, because we know when we eat these foods and the benefits that the antioxidants and the various vitamins will provide from eating your fresh fruits and your vegetables will build that immune system that will make you so much more, what you would say, better. I'm not withstanding that we have to take the vaccine as a precautionary measure, but of course ensuring that promoting our fruits and vegetables aspect of eating into this will help with our immune system, because if we are not eating healthy, as everybody would say, a healthy nation is a rich nation, and by extension our people will be able to function well if we eat well and properly. You'd always hear that attribute to every sector. If you're eating sports, if your athletes are not eating well, they cannot perform on the field. If your child is not eating well, its educational level will not be as good as someone who is feeding the child the proper and most nutritious foods to eat. And of course, as we do eat fresh foods that are locally grown, must say it is more nutritious, and put a plug in for eating local and buying local here right now, as we constantly face this and try to overcome this COVID-19 pandemic.
You know, while we I spoke about the panic buying and so on, and because of the need to really have food and to be secure, knowing that you're not going to run out of food and that you have enough to eat to keep yourself alive. But then some of the things that I saw, and I am not here to judge people, and I am not here to decide what people consume, but we really need to look at our consumption patterns, what we consume. You had people who were so concerned about buying up the alcohol and buying up the tobacco and making sure they have supplies of these things. Of course, you know, when we have the lockdowns and so on. But at the very same time, the diet that we have is basically a personal choice.
Of course, it is.
It is a personal choice, and you know, what we eat is a personal choice that has consequences for us as persons, consequences to our health, but at the very same time, those consequences, those personal consequences, eventually become collective. Because if you are not eating healthily, and you may think it's my choice to eat what I want, but if you're not eating healthily and then you get sick, then it becomes your family's problem. It becomes your children's problem. You can't work. You're not productive. It becomes a burden on the public health system if people are not healthy and so on. So there's a whole rippling effect that happens when we do not take care of our health. And that is what people probably don't realize. So my question to you, Mr. Chapman, is what is the Department of Agriculture doing to promote more growth, more persons involved, more farmers in growing fruits and vegetables? Because we can speak about the importance, but at the very same time, we have to put that into practice. And the Department of Agriculture, the Ministry of Agriculture, must lead the way.
Of course, Mr. Williams. And just before I do go into those initiatives that we have planned for 2021 and going further afield, and even in later down in our presentation, the way forward for the agricultural sector, I must make one plug here and make one statement to the listening public. I could always remember my grandmother, or you would always say your grandparents say, "A apple a day keep the doctor away." And that we didn't understand the importance of that statement. And of course, I'd always plug back and said, things that were for grandparents we would have taught in us, they are now coming back to be the reality of the COVID-19 pandemic. And look at this, of course, I don't know if it was designated because of COVID-19 pandemic, but it shows us back of simply eating our fruits. And maybe you could even think that even when you were a little child, you could hear your parents and go look your fruits and your thing and you go help your grandparents, because they would be planting the tanya and the dasheen and basically eating those kind of food that will help strengthen your body and your immune system. But notwithstanding to the question that you really would have asked, about what our department, our ministry by extension is doing to try to combat this. And I must make a plug here now for one of the key initiatives and thank the federal government for this, by extension the increase of our agricultural budget by a further $3 million this year to last year. That shows comprehensively that the government by extension is thinking that agriculture is important with this. Of course, people may bash me and say $3 million is not any money, but it is a start. And of course, we all have to remember that we are still in the COVID-19 pandemic situation. And of course, which would have alluded, our biggest pillar of income revenue, the tourism sector, is, as you would say, it's dead right now. And so, of course, we, from the ministry and from the department, thank the federal government for that $3 million injection into our sector. That would lead me to promote one of our new initiatives, is our Farmers Agricultural Assistance Program that we have just will be launching or just launched, that we will assist farmers in enhancing their productivity in any forms of anyway. Not saying that if you make a request for X amount, you will get the full request, but because we would do an evaluation process and take you along the steps and have you, the officers, guide you and to help you along the way, of course, and try to build that resilience into that. So it have various categories that one can apply for. For instance, you could apply for a startup assistance, you could apply for upgrade, you could even apply for maybe a phenomenon back to a situation last year with the tropical Baltic, or we are now experiencing so-called some high wind situation could be affecting the fruits of some of the vegetables, because the high winds will now driving the bees away. That would not aid with the pollination of the fruits, or even blowing some of the blossoms them away and so on, cutting back on the productivity of the trees or of the whole production system. So basically they have that various categories that you could apply for this assistance, and I'm encouraging all the farmers alike now to get involved and get to know your extension officers and ask your assistant officer, how can you benefit as again to further help the food system, our production systems, to build our resilience and provide more healthier food for our citizens to eat.
Yeah, last week I had on the program a Mr. Kyle Flanders, who is Assistant Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, but they were speaking about backyard gardening, which is another initiative that people can have, basically to have a subsistence, supply of fruits and vegetables and so on. But let me move to Mr. James, who is the director. Mr. James, you recently held on the 4th of February, your annual review and planning meeting for 2021 under the theme, Together We Invest, Transform and Build Partnerships for Sustainable Agriculture and Food Security. Now, there are some key words in that theme: invest, transform, build, partnerships, sustainable agriculture, food security. That theme was well chosen. Now, what are some of the things that actually came out of that annual review and planning meeting, Mr. James? As the director, I know you would have had to deliver a report at that meeting. Could you tell us what were some of the key issues that came out of that meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Williams, host, and all listening, viewing at whatever point. It is wonderful to be here again. Yes, you mentioned the theme, and I would just like to add that the theme was crafted by two staff members, Dr. Challenger and Ian Chapman, who is right here with me in the studio at this time. And we thank them because, yes, it does reflect quite ambitiously, but what we really, the direction in which we need to go. In that review and planning, it's an annual meeting, and what we seek to do is to give an overview of our stewardship in the year past, and also to highlight to our viewing and listening audience our program for the year in which we are. So I'll tell you a bit of some of the highlights that we achieved last year. It was a very challenging year everywhere, and especially for us. And of course, we know that the main challenge, which was new, had to do with the COVID-19. And it impacted us in that when there was, especially in the early part, when there was a lockdown, when there was a stay home, we too, the farmers too, had to stay in place, and it really affected the overall output. Nonetheless, we were able to make good strides in our tick control program, in our pest surveillance and disease identification, our goat breeding program. We started some excellent work in the Barefoot area, Barefoot Center of Excellence, and in our monkey management program. Very briefly, I will say a few things in relation to some of those. As it relates, for example, to our tick control program, I think it is familiar knowledge at this time that in 2018, thereabout, the number of sheep, goat, and cattle that had this common skin disease, which we call dermatophilosis, the incidence has increased. In fact, the numbers increased from around 225 back in 2016 to like 1,288 by 2019. And it also had other impacts, not just by animal skin being diseased and unsightly, but the intensity was of such that, again, animals started to die. So we have like 1,230 animals that we lost. 308 goats, about 290 sheep, and the worst affected cattle, over 600 cattle. And so the department took the bold decision that we will assist the farmers in controlling this problem. It's the animals, but obviously they needed a lot of help. So we did two things. We asked the government to be generous and enough to compensate farmers who had lost animals through cash donations. And government was able to issue just under $500,000 to round about 70 odd farmers. But in addition to that, we asked government to buy more of the acaricide, meaning the substance used to control the tick. And we just put a team together, a voluntary team, and send them out there to control free of cost to the farmers. And I was able to report that when we started, we had over 1,000 animals affected by the disease. And in about a year or so, we were able to bring the problem down to under 50. The thing though, yes, we know it's an excellent achievement, but we do not want to rest on our laurels. Mr. Williams,
yes,
we were here before. Sometime in the early 80s, we had gotten the problem under control, but it have resurfaced again. So what we need to do, government has decided, look, we're not even going to wait on the farmers, we're going to do it for them. And because once you have a few females, then you can have a generation. Is what happened with the monkeys. Remember, we only started with 13 monkeys. It could have been even 12 males and 1 female. Right now we're over 60,000. With these ticks, 1 female lays about 20,000 eggs. So it only takes 2 females to equal the population of St. Kitts. So we need to just stay on it until we can arrest the problem significantly. But I'm happy that we were able to report a good report that we were making progress in that area. Let me say quickly again, I was able to say to all that our goat breeding program as well is working excellently. As we speak about transforming agriculture, one of the things we have to do is to be able to get the animals to have a greater weight gain in a shorter period of time. So we sort of want you to introduce a more superior blood, a more superior male that grows faster, that puts on weight faster. And I am happy to report that we had brought in 3 males. And so far, we were able to get 103 young kids from the breeding program. So the Federation have available to it now 103 improved animals. And of course, we will continue to do breeding. We have like 34 males. So those can be used as stud males, some 68 females. And so they are available for sale, and folks can have them and improve their stock. So we believe that we were able to give very good report. I have to say as well that on the downside, sort of, we made our farmers aware that we have a new problem in bananas. If you're going into banana production, you need to know all the ramifications. And there's a new disease. As often, sometimes when you find these things, they haven't just come. We believe that they were in the Old Road, Otley's area, down in the gut sides for a while. We went down there, we saw some bananas there with the symptoms. But now they are showing up on certain farms. We had our suspicions and we took samples, we sent them to be tested in Florida, and we found that it's a disease we call black cicotoca. It affects the bananas, then they don't develop properly, and so farmers need to know and know the management package that they must undertake in order to be able to get a good crop. So we were able to give that kind of information. I'll mention one other thing, which has to do with reporting to our stakeholders what was happening with our stimulus program. It's a program that draw a lot of attention in that, as my colleague said, coming on to the COVID, government made some funds available and said, look, go out there and do farming. And we engaged about 270 farmers and said, look, let us make sure that we don't starve. And one of the things that we need to plant is squash, because squash has a long life and it can take the dry season. But listen, we need to plant in sequence. We don't want everything at one time. And so we started with the first 60 odd or so farmers, and we were able to get quite a good harvest of squash, sweet pepper, watermelon, and there was another crop there. Cabbage. Cabbage?
Yes.
Squash, pumpkin, pumpkin, right? Overall, we harvested about some 63,000 pounds. Pumpkins, 10,000 pounds. Squash, 17,000 pounds. And we were able, just in case. But as it turned out, that there wasn't that kind of crisis. And so we were able to put a hold on that program. But in this year going forward, one of the things we said is that we really have to use the $3 million to help to transform. And that is some of that I would like to engage my listeners and my viewers this afternoon. How do we seek to transform? We're looking at education, we're looking at marketing, we're looking at investment, a business type approach. And so the forum itself was exciting, it was excellent, and we hope today that could be a follow-up, engaging the right stakeholders and building for a better agriculture. Just finally, our total support to the farmers was somewhere in the region of $1.6 or so million direct support to a number of farmers, in fact about 1,000 farmers also.
Right. Now you recently had a night market. That was a new thing?
It was.
And could you sort of give us an evaluation of how that went? I know that Taiwan is very famous for its night markets. Very, very nice. But could you give us, I suppose the night market was modeled after the very fact that Taiwan has its night markets and so on.
Just before the director could give the specifics to that, if I'm a part of the planning committee, is part of the planning committee for the night market or activity. As you rightfully said, the night market in Taiwan is a huge highlight. Any capture anybody eye if you do get to travel to Taiwan. Myself, I did travel to Taiwan with some of the other key members on the committee, and that is what we put out there to our ministry and say, because we was looking to something new to try to maybe build that audience, that to create a market opportunity for our farmers. And we really wanted it to be like somewhat like the Taiwan situation, but of course we have to stay within the protocols of the NOC, and so we would have scaled down somewhat to just strictly the agricultural component of it. And I think this is where I must say now the director could highlight the specifics of the success. And from personal reviews, I know it was a tremendous success. It's one that the general public keeps asking about, when will be our next night market, and we have a tentative date for the next one. And I could possibly say, and we currently in the process of writing to the authorities to get the official permission to carry out this activity. And I don't, until I think I will hold back and maybe putting the date out there until we get the official permission to say.
Okay. And of course the reviving of the Barefoot's Livestock Center of Excellence, Mr. James. I mean, when I was growing up, I used to hear about Barefoots, but then it went dormant for a while, and you have now resuscitated it. What basically is the objective for doing this?
Yes, in fact, Barefoot is a very old livestock farm, and it, like yourself, when I was in primary school, Barefoots, there was much cattle and pigs, and it's a place that schools used to travel for school outings and picnics and field tours. right? And over time, it dwindled down until it basically was almost like closed. But the idea of reviving it and making it a center of excellence is really like a breeding farm. The idea that we're promoting is that instead of farmers having to worry about raising young weaners, babies, right? They can come to Barefoot and purchase. So we're thinking in terms of sheep, goat, pigs, and cattle, especially beef cattle. Well, originally most of the cattle in St. Kitts came from milk stock, right? Whereas the cattle in Nevis were meat or beef stock. But now the idea is for us to switch over, and both islands would use meat animals, because we have stopped milking cattle for a while, although that's kind of bad. Fresh milk is very important, right? I mean, if we remember, Barefoot used to sell fresh milk along with flavored milk, chocolate milk, and so on, right? But we will rehabilitate the pastures. Many of them have shrubs and trees and so on in them which have to be removed. So you'll reestablish the pastures, also use improved grasses, and host and stock this, maybe the same goats we spoke about, a number of high performing sheep, and also cattle, and so that farmers can come, you know, you want 10 young ones, you purchase them, and you rear them just up to the point that they should be slaughtered. We want to get away from this thing where you're keeping animals for 8-10 years just because you like the way they look. We want to inculcate the business concept in our farmers so that they will just, like a pig shouldn't go more than, let's say, 8 months before it's slaughtered. So that is done. So we're hoping that as we put together a new package, as we put together new thoughts, new ideas, new concepts to our farmers, that these things will be embraced, and that Barefoots will become a very important part in terms of reducing the stress of caring for the young, and hopefully making it more profitable for them to be in business.
Right. Mr. Chapman, it is being said that up to 50% of fruits and vegetables produced in developing countries are lost in the supply chain between harvest and consumption.
Oh, wow.
The biggest factor or the biggest concern for the United Nations is that same statement you just made, food losses. It's all good to produce, but the food losses, what happens between production, at the end of production, to the consumer, how we handle our foods, or how the farmers handle the food to the market, and then the market to the consumer. That is, and we all know the basic needs of fruits and vegetables. They are very, what you say, perishables, short life.
Yes.
So the handling post-harvest, what we call post-harvest handling, during that process is very critical. And I would have spoken to my technical team, and it is one of the training programs that we will be offering to our farmers this year, because again, we must provide healthy and safe food for our consumers to consume.
Because they have a shorter shelf life, and I have seen, lamentably, I have seen here sometimes in some supermarkets some fruits that really should not be on the shelves, and I am very serious. They're dried out and they're what's not and so on. Those are not things you really should be selling to people. But we understand, you know, when it comes to fruits and vegetables, we have to preserve the quality. You know, the quality is important, because the quality speaks to the nutritional value, the high nutritional value, and so on. But on top of that, because you may have an abundance of fruits, and because of the short life of our fruits and so on, what can be done? What other spin-offs industry can be done in terms of our fruits? How is that being encouraged? You make jams, and you can make jellies, and you can get into the whole
agro-processing.
Value added.
Well, the value-added agro-processing component, and again, that is one of our key development areas for our ministry this year, is the value-added. How can we extend the life of our product in the event, again, of any serious outbreak, making food available to our consumers, our citizens, to say our citizens and residents of our federation. Value added, you mentioned jams. There are other mechanisms that we can produce. Just go drink, puri, dry them, dehydrate them, chips. There are various forms that we can add value towards the whole sector, and not just, we must not just think about the, of course, eating fresh is more, what you say, healthier, but as for food security purpose, we really would need to think, and basically knowing what we put in, and basically the preservatives that may be used, and we may not necessarily have to use preservatives because they are more somewhat natural measures that you can use. I'm not a food technologist. Don't quote me, people. Don't quote me. I'm just thinking as a human of ways. I'm not a I'm a productionist, not a technologist.
Yes.
Not a food technologist.
And I raise that because it brings back to me the whole thing about eating local, producing local, eating local, and really having fresh fruits and vegetables. All that lot of fruits and vegetables that we are importing, by the time it leaves the supplier and by the time it reaches here and so on, it would have lost something in terms of nutritional value. Mr. James.
Yeah, I hate to have to cut it. Yes, I mean, for example, even when you began and speaking about the low quality of imported foods, I am glad that I am not the only one who's been observing it. I mean, you have things in the refrigerator, an orange, and the pegs are dry. You have fruits and the stems are dry.
I pick up tangerines, for example, from the supermarket. Not only is there is no juice, but some of them they're already spoiling.
Yes, they're rotted.
Actually, by the time they do it here, you could see the mold on them.
Yes. Yeah. But we have fresh guavas. And you know, there was a WhatsApp post going around recently explaining how you need so many of some of these exotic fruits to give you the same amount of vitamin C as, like, let's say, one tamarind, or a sour guava. And we need to be able to get our people to take a greater liking to our local foods. They're available, they're fresh, they give more of what they're supposed to give, and they're better for us. Yes, it's good to produce, we need to produce, but we also have to have a big educational campaign that our people will understand there are many reasons why you need to support what you produce rather than having to depend on somebody else's economy. And it is I mean, we have a lot of work to do. I want to thank you for your program because it gets the word out there. And we need to educate a lot of people through programs like this.
I can understand there are some fruits that are really not grown in the tropics. They can only grow in temperate climates. For example, I know you were trying some experiment with apples.
Yes.
I didn't hear anything else about it. Did the experiment fall through? But apples and grapes and certain fruits that come from temperate climes. But at the very same time, there are tropical fruits that we can grow and we are importing. We're importing so many tropical fruits that we ourselves really can grow here. And for example, sometimes I look on the shelf of supermarkets again, and sometimes the bananas, Lord, they look so wrinkled. You know what? I know that we have never really been into banana production. That is more like in the Windward Islands, because you know, we have always had very flat and undulating land and fertile land, which is for sugarcane production. And we've grown sugarcane. Bananas have been really grown in the Windward Islands, St. Lucia and Dominica and St. Vincent, and that sort of a thing. But we've never really gotten...
some rubbish sometimes.
And we have never really gotten into banana production because we have been more or less sugar production.
Sugar, and then we led into what you say more of a vegetable type instead of maybe the banana plantation or banana production or banana planting or the muscus species production system, but the director would alluded to that. I could speak to at least 2 or 3 farms right now that at least one of them offhand is 19 acres, and that is where the farm is leading into banana and planting. And I think Jerry Lewis again is trying to establish another 5-6 acres of banana, because again the quality that you speak to, that is going, you grow your own thing. And because the director just alluded it, I wouldn't repeat the comment, but the people send something that is substandard to the quality that
substandard.
That you want.
Not necessarily Winwards, but some bananas that you go and you see there, the cooking figs that have been ripened. And our people, I mean, sorry to cut you, Mr.
And part of the problem, I think, sorry, Mr. James, here in the Federation with Agriculture, is that for so many years we were simply, what we practiced was mono-agriculture, monocrop.
Yes.
And so therefore there really is a need, now that we don't have sugar cane, there is a need to have diversification in terms of our crop production.
We need diversification. Let me try and modify that statement, though. I still do not believe that we should produce a little of many things. I think if you're going to build a good economic unit, yes, we need to do a few things, but maybe 5 or 6 things, right? And really build them big so that you can employ people, so that folks, you could mechanize, you could really have serious economic activity, you know. We will always have to rely on other sources for certain things.
Certainly.
But there are lots of things that we can do very well. We're very good at watermelon, tomatoes,
sweet
peppers, potatoes, pumpkins, that kind of thing, squash. And we need to commercialize them. Time enough that we have some of these things year-round in high quantities. It needs, we spoke about promotion, but it also needs some discussions with our importers, the supermarkets.
Yeah.
It needs a lot of discussion.
But sometimes what I find, to Mr. James, is that sometimes you have a glut on the local market, because what you find is that you have farmers and basically they're planting the very same thing.
Yes.
Well,
and so therefore really and truly they have to get them off of their hands quickly. I remember some time ago there was a fella that was down in town selling pineapples, and pineapples were going for a dime, really, because there were so many pineapples. He had to get them off of his hand.
But if there was any little processing,
right,
it would not have been, he would not have had enough pineapple juice, for example, and sliced pineapples and so on.
And that is one of the direction, again, I would say, of our ministry and our department leading that way, that what should do with these excess productions or excess amount of fruits or vegetables that we have them there, in juice, cans, slice, dice. You could see, just calling a company from International Dole, they do not let anything waste, even the best. The worst pineapple is what is they would dice and send to us. So it's not the one that we would say, I mean, want to buy that. That is the one that they would go put in their processing thing and dice it, and so that they don't lose anything. Coupled to that, back to one of the statements you made, that about production being heavy around a certain time. Of course, we all must remember the dynamics of our current agricultural system, which is one of our why we choose this team, is transforming our sector. Over 80% of our crop farmers depend upon what the Lord sends, the rain. So so everybody have the same.
The rain and the sun.
The rain and the sun, and basically, and because when you can't tell me plant when the rain is falling, how can that be? So we are currently speaking to all our international agencies about our major element, water resource. Just before I came here today, I just came off a meeting with a consultant, really trying to get that project crafted as to what key element in the
food production system that is needed. Water is life. Everybody will say that. But again, our country, you made attention to it, that sugar was always king, and the water policy that we have didn't, or what we currently is governed by a federation, by St Kitts and Nevis, and I think Nevis would have a different policy over there for them to guide Nevis. But as for St Kitts, and agriculture is not included in that as a component, as of a service provider of water services. So water services is not obligated to give a farmer water, but of course with the interjection of our department ministry, we would make a plug and say that Mr. Williams is a key farmer of production, and we request that he get a water connection. But again, Mr. Williams can't get the full supply to irrigate his whole farm, because water service will tell you agriculture can take 2 million and we produce 2 million. So basically we are in the process now of speaking to our various stakeholders and international agencies of recrafting our water policy, and even have one specific towards the agricultural sector, and that we from a ministry department can govern and institute and put the necessary checks and monitoring programs that is in place, that our farmers are here too. And if you're not hearing to that, you can't think, because we are talking about sustainability. You cannot be using a key resource and just wasting it. In discussion again with the consultant today, measures to put in place like meters and on the farm, so you would know that if we have a just drawing reference that in our restoration program of some of the dams that we have just restored. Currently we have just restored at least 4 dams, or in the process of restoring 4 dams that has the capability of holding 1 million gallons of water that is used for farming. So basically just for me to be using numbers, and I'm not saying that these are things. If 4 farmers is in that cluster, I mean if the tank has a million gallons, that's $250,000. Sorry, gallons. Money. Oh. We all think at the end result. For the farmer, per farmer. So basically have a meter and basically monitoring if Mr. Williams, you don't reach 250,000 gallons and your crop ain't even reaching, you're not adhering to what we will say the best practices, because people water and not irrigate. There's a total difference. I would say you don't drink water every day, but you drink it at crucial points of the day to keep your body cool and refreshed, so that you rejuvenate yourself. So it's likewise with the plant. You cannot give a plant water for 2 hours. You're encouraging fungal and other growth, which will end up being detrimental to your plant. You may be thinking that you're doing good, but you're actually doing yourself harm. When you don't even realize that is why you see your plants them start dropping out, because sclerosis and all kind of different fungal diseases starts to step in. So I don't really want to get into the whole technical aspect of production, but we, as the director rightfully said, key educational campaigns by our ministry, and using this platform right now and various other platforms that we would use in the near future to educate our farmers, and versus educate our backyard gardeners, and by extension the federation in general, the importance of everything and in terms of the whole production system. So I just want to make that plug in there.
Thanks. Let's try just very quickly, just to back up on what Mr. Chapman said. There are 2 very critical, there are a few critical factors of agriculture in St. Kitts, and water is one of them. Water will always be in limited supply. And so, yes, we have about 900 people registered, and maybe over 1,000 persons who ply their trade. And we have a distinct dry season, so ideally everybody should and would want water. But here's where the technology comes in. You want to be able to use the least amount of water to get the greatest output. So he spoke about some of the factors, and it even goes beyond that. Instrumentation, your understanding of the physiology of the plant, your understanding of the soil and how the soil retains water, and how best you can capture this water, your understanding about how a plant operates and transpires and so on, so that it brings us into things like protected agriculture.
Yes.
Because when you're out in the field, whenever any water is lost, it goes in the atmosphere. It's gone.
Right.
But if you could have a system where even as the plant transpires, the water is captured in the roof, it comes back down, right? And we need systems where you can get the greatest efficiency from water, because water is always going to be scarce. You realize we don't have any inland ponds and lakes. You also realize that even the wells, they will tell you plain that the wells, only the upper portion of the well is good water. The bottom is seawater. So even if a well is X feet deep, it's not all available water to either us for drinking nor for the plants, because if the salinity is too high, it's an issue. So water is very critical, and I honestly think that we have to educate our farmers going forward in the use of these facilities, including water.
Yes. We are going to go to the phone lines, but
certainly.
Mr. James, I would ask you, what sort of a technical support is being offered to farmers, especially agribusiness support? Because we have farmers, and of course at the end of the day, some of them are doing the farming basically for subsistence, but there are some of them who are doing it for sale and to go to the market and things like that. And what sort of a support is being offered to them so that they can better market their produce?
I think we're strong in production, right? We have a lot of extension officers, knowledgeable and so on. We're not as well endowed as it relates to technology and value added. There is the agro-processing lab, right, that is run by the Department of Agriculture, where we make a range of products. And, people can go and use the facility. But I think in terms of us training other persons,
yes,
we need to do a lot more of that. And also work closer with the division of cooperatives to encourage our people to work together. Because instead of a lot of persons producing discrete small quantities of different brands and different products, sometimes in our settings it makes more sense if we can pool our resources and kind of like market ourselves under one label. So there's need for that kind of thing, so that we can penetrate maybe the tourism market a little more. We can penetrate the supermarkets nearby countries, and maybe even further afield in niche markets and so on. That's one of the areas that I think we can build more on. And I think going forward, it's one of the things that we should look into some more, because not just a lot elaborate work on production, but I mean there's room for work in technology and value added. Well, when I say technology, I mean food processing.
Yes, Mr. Chapman.
Well, just to make a plug to what the statement you asked, similar to that, my program, or my program, but the division that I lead. Currently, we are developing what we call a farm business approach, which is market oriented. So basically, we will be having a training program developed for that farm business. So you don't think it is run primarily as a business. You understand the production and the various different components as you run, as somebody who said they're running a supermarket, or think the various levels that you need to think to have that price and make sure that your production and your price end up matching the same, and of course your profit. Right. So basically that whole business approach will be a training program offered by our division hopefully within the next month or so to the farming community to develop. And just notwithstanding, not just that, but every month we're offering a different training program. At least we have at least 9 of them outlined between this upcoming month and the end of November, of different, notwithstanding we could do more training programs, but these are key ones identified. Just drawing reference, piggybacking onto that, we have one called financial management, cost of production, various production measures in between that would end up leading to, and then we have I think a session on marketing and post-handling harvesting. I'm just trying to recall some of them out of my head, but we have that whole training module, and every month our department, our ministry will be offering training programs to educate and build our farmers' capacity towards this whole end goal of food security and providing for our people safe and wholesome food for our citizens and residents to eat.
Right, and I'm happy that you expanded that definition, because food security is not just about having enough food. Food security speaks to as well the nutritional value of the food that we consume, and so therefore food must be safe and food,
and
affordable as well. All of that has to do with food security. We are going to go to the phone lines. The numbers to call, the local number is 465-2555, 465-2555, and the overseas number is 1-718-577-2916. We welcome your calls. Seems as though we have a caller on the line already. Somebody was eagerly waiting. Working for you, good afternoon.
Yes, Mr. Lesroy, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Every time I hear Mr. James is his name?
Yes.
On the radio talking about agriculture, I get upset. I get upset because they talk about backyard gardening and they encourage people to plant. It is too much talk and no action. Yesterday I went to buy, I don't know what I didn't get the beginning of the program because I just got home, and I turned my radio on in my vehicle and I heard the tail end of it. Yesterday I went to buy cayenne pepper because someone in the backyard garden chat room said that was the last thing they tried. Because we have been trying everything. We have, there's a dance and a party going on in our backyards with monkeys. You understand? When I got home yesterday afternoon, all I saw on the ground in my backyard garden was the green bits and pieces of my Roma tomatoes on the ground. And this goes on a daily basis. I spend my time in my yard chasing after monkeys. A neighbor of mine, Mr. Edwin James, he cut down his sugar apple tree and whatever other fruit tree except for his tamarind tree in his yard, because they jump in his sugar apple tree, eat his sugar apple, and then jump on his roof and damage his roof. Same thing with me. Same thing with my neighbors. Every time we hear the dogs barking, we know, oh, those vagabonds are around. We have the healthiest monkeys in St Kitts. And the backyard gardeners, they are unhealthy because we cannot eat the stuff that we plant. Mm-hmm. I have a drum that I put a pipe in so that when rain comes, the water goes into that drum, and that's what I water my garden with. So Mr. James needs to stop talking. He upsets me.
Okay. Okay,
thank you, Mr. Lesroy.
Yes, thank you so much for your input.
Thank you.
Someone
we
else.
Have another question?
We have another. No. I know that the department, Mr. James, your department has a monkey control program, but this has been an ongoing problem with the monkeys. I don't know what people can do personally to secure themselves against the monkeys.
There are lots of things that you can do.
And so on, but the monkeys are
yes,
many.
I'd like to speak to that briefly. I would say to the lady that being upset is a premature kind of behavior. There's a lot that the lady can do other than being upset, because I don't think her problem would be solved like that. One, whenever persons have a problem, they can their personal solutions, their overall government solution. I can make a suggestion to her, for example. In the meanwhile, that person can have a small caged area.
Put a pin there. We have another caller. Working for you, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Leroy.
Good afternoon, sir. Yes, sir.
As usual, good program.
Thank you.
Don't forget what we remind you, tell you me and have no backyard garden. Last week, remember that?
Yes, last week you did.
Yes, right. So I can still keep up that. Now, Mr. James, I want to say something here, brother. You know, a lot of us been talking about agriculture for years. Well, what we talked about, that gone behind we back. And nobody take us on. Now, they know that the sugar industry was going to close, even though Aloy was told that it will not be closed. Ragadam, he kill it, he murder it. And we've been saying, plant quick harvesting food that we could supply our neighbors around here. We got the good soil. 3 feet at least of proper soil we have here. Plant, what you call it here, peanuts. Plant a load of that, pineapple, sorrel, and bananas. Start with them there. Now, when we go in the marketplace and we go buy a sorrel off the shelf, we don't know if that is sorrel. There are a load of things can make water turn red.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something that we don't know could be poisonous. Turn the water red and squeal a little lime juice in it to give it the vitamin C taste.
Yeah.
If we had plant sorrel here in our country, we could have supplied any place with real natural sorrel. But Mr. James, you are not responsible for turning up the land. You have a job to go on the radio and talk, and so therefore you have to do it. But people who are responsible to say that this soil is turned over and cultivated, they must listen to small people. This monkey thing, you know, I don't mean that they know it. The next thing monkey got to do, go for the vaccine for the COVID. Because this is what you call a nuisance, annoyance, pest, destruction. They worse than the COVID, you know. No care where you plant in your yard, they're going to find it. They're going to find it. And like the lady say, too many carpenters get job to repair roof from monkey jumping on them and dancing up upon them. I tell them already, put on gun upon them, kill out a lot, reduce the population to a small thing. They must say, well, oh, you can't do this because some people in a way we're going to say we can't kill. We can't kill. How they say they won't kill the mosquito them? Eh? How they not say that day? We are an independent country. Nobody's supposed to tell us do not get rid of the things that destroying our economy. Anyway, I had enough?
Yeah, right.
Okay, Culture. Thank you so much.
Right. Okay, so, Mr. Lesroy,
yes.
I could say a little bit. Before last year, there was no monkey control program. Last year, the government put $1.2 million for a structured program. I understand that it will be a good PR stunt if persons knew or if persons saw a lot of people up and down with traps and guns say, look, I'm hunting monkeys, right? You would know that we're doing something.
Yes.
But as the caller just said, there are certain limitations. And so instead of taking on the international community like that, it's a more discreet, covered kind of program, right? Just yesterday, we were in a farm district, and monkey is a big problem everywhere. Home by me, home by the lady, all of us. And we have promised that cluster of farmers that we're going to come in there in a dedicated way and try to suppress the population. Last year, we were able to take out over 400 monkeys. On average, we do 400 to 600 monkeys. We will try to intensify the program, but there are certain limitations. It is not going to be resolved overnight. It does not mean that nothing is happening. In the meanwhile, you have a little garden, right? Then if you have some extra wire, you can build something sturdy so that instead of having 600, well, let's say 100 plants, you may be able only to cage 10 plants. But if you have the 10 plants, with wire to the side and at the top. It's 10 plants that you're going to harvest from because the monkeys can't get to them, rather than having 100 in the open. Sometimes we have to help ourselves until government help arrives. It's a lot better than frustrating ourselves. In life, you need to try and be innovative. I'll go off point a bit here and say one of the reasons I eat black pudding, blood pudding, whatever you call it, is because, in my opinion, the white folks, they took the best of the carcass and the parts that they knew were waste and could not be used. That's what they throw in front of our forefathers. And our forefathers, instead of dumping them, they sat over it and said, what can I do with this thing? I'm going to make food out of it. And they took entrails, which are supposed to be highly poisonous because of the E. coli bacteria, and they cleaned them up in such a way that we could make a food out of them, to the point now where tripe is being sold in supermarkets. So sometimes, instead of us just trying our hands up, sometimes we could try to be innovative. That is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, this tripe thing you're talking about, in Dominican Republic, they make a very nice dish. It's like a soup, and they call it mondongo.
Okay.
And basically, it is stripes that they use. But people are registering their frustration and their anger, and their emotions are really not to be brushed aside. We understand basically what is happening, but at the very same time, we have to try to do something on the personal level, and of course the department. Working for you, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yes.
For years, I've been hoping that a model of an integrated farm be established in St Kitts and Nevis for demonstration to the farmers. By an integrated farm, I mean a farm that has both crops and animals. Take a crop like potato. All the small potatoes which are not good for the market and goes to feed the animals. The animal waste, there's a simple technology around to convert the waste into methane gas, which the farmer can use for cooking, to run a generator, and to electrify his fence. And I think such a farm needs to be established in this country to demonstrate to the farmers what an integrated farm is like. Too often farmers have extra products, they can't go on the market, they have to go to waste, those can go to feed animals. So we're hoping that sometime soon that integrated farm be established in St. Kitts as a demonstration to farmers. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your point.
That's a very good point, you know. That's a very good point. It reduces waste. It's a very good point.
Yes. Okay, what are some of the new initiatives, Mr. Chapman, that the Agriculture Department has for 2021? Because, you know, you must have new ideas and want to put new things in place.
Well, Mr. Williams, there's a series of new initiatives that our department has to take to the farming community. One, of course, is an innovative protective cultivation system that would target at least 25 to 40% of women and 25% in youth. We will have 4 pilot projects in the country established, and complete training courses will be done for modules such as post-harvesting practices, as I mentioned earlier, coupled with training, a course for modules of sustainable practices that of cultivation systems for vegetables and seedling production, as well as high-quality vegetable and marketing. And we'd also have field days so that people could come and see what is going on during this whole initiative. Also, we have cooperation for adaptation of resilience to climate change. This speaks more to the water harvesting component. Again, we will train our extension services in this aspect.
We have another caller. Working for you, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Williams.
Good afternoon.
And good afternoon, Mr. James. And
Yes,
good
sir.
afternoon to Mr. Ian Chapman there.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you.
I always impressed with you.
Thank you.
Anyway, yeah, good afternoon, yeah, man. Now, my little input here this afternoon. What I see some of the farmers them do, because I in the mountain almost every day. What they do right now to keep off the mountains, the trees them we're surrounding the farm, They clean around the farm, cut down the trees, cut them down, cut down the trees, the world catch the trees, and so. And the monkey keep off in that way. They don't get much monkeys. Because what the monkey them will do, when they not send you to harbor out in to when you're gone out your ground, they start around and stay with you until you're gone. So a lot of these ground farmers now, that is going to clean around the surrounding, and the monkey kind of keep off. But anyway, we move on. Now to backyard garden farming, right? I listened to the program the other day, and I think that backyard gardening could work, because it worked back in our time. Because let me tell you something, we big mountain ground, we had 4 mountain ground in the mountain, my father and my mother. And we still used to do our backyard garden, got cassava plant home, got your carrots, got your little thyme and herbs and all these things. So I believe backyard garden could play a great role, even to helping pay electricity bill or whatsoever, or pay your water bill. You understand? And I know that the government can't do much with land in this country right now with farming. Because everybody talking about farming, but everybody still want a house. Everybody still want a big mansion, but still want a big thing. You understand? So I believe that what the government should do right now, the agriculture department, provide some land in a certain areas and get these young men and women out there have nothing to do. Get some kind of program for them and plant food, plant pumpkin, plant sweet potato. These are the things we come up after. And I believe that if we do this, I believe all this hypertensive, this high blood sugar and all these things, kidney problem and all those things, because you need to be to eat healthy.
Yes.
Okay. We are going to think about sweet potato, give starch and all kind of things. Too much starch with. I made to understand the starch in those food good for everybody.
Yeah.
So everybody can break them down. All right then.
Okay. Thank you so much, caller, for your input. And we did mention earlier that this year the United Nations is celebrating the International Year of Fruits and Vegetables, and it's to highlight a lot of what you were saying about the health and nutrition and so on. Mr. Chapman, you were speaking about the initiatives.
Yes, and in the interest of time, and just in case of any other caller want to get in, I would not go in full detail, but just to highlight.
But give us a synopsis.
Synopsis of the subject area. We have the Corporation for Adaptation of the Resilience to Climate Change, the strengthening of our water and soil resource management for the sustainable of the agri-food systems, and in the Federation in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. We have the improved resilience of our farmers and farming communities by improving the food and water security through integrated strategic interventions. Again, we have a water, and we have a lot of projects that is geared towards addressing or trying to address the water situation in country. And of course, leading to this and piggybacking on the 2021 census, next year we'll be doing our agricultural census. So a lot of groundwork for leading up to that will be done this year. And of course, we will see that contribution that people are alluding to of the backyard persons, because all of this data will be captured and maybe opt-in or what you say, the contribution to GDP of the agricultural sector, when we have that wider capture of the contribution being made by these backyard persons, because I know for sure that a lot of them plant lettuce, herbs, and different stuff that really that the department don't really, or even stats do really capture that data. So we are hoping from this agricultural census that we could have a wider sense of the kind of production levels that persons on a smaller scale, maybe a house lot or less than a house lot, backyard, you say, doing that the department, ministry don't get to really pay attention and focus to. And of course, our local water harvesting and restoration of the dams that we have here on island, and our agriculture peace initiative. This is where we are working with the young men on the peace initiative, trying to develop a program of reforming and reshaping them into society and training them that whole business approach, everything. So we have that on our cards as a major initiative for us this year, to teaching them the various models and programs of the agricultural sector and trying to help them reform and reshape their livelihoods as to being better citizens in our federation. And the director would alluded our protected agricultural system. We would have some projects and some more projects locally on being rolled out, maybe from the next month, director. And the restoration of our extension services, because we see the need now for revamping and reviving our extension services, because again there's a higher demand on our human resource, and we need backyard garden, protected agriculture, various the food processing and technologies. So even the water management component may even have another unit. So we are now in the what we call our restoration of our extension services, and seeing how better we could equip an officer dedicated to each of these functions. So, Mr. Williams, those are some of the, what I would not say all the work we're doing, because it's not limited. Of course, we are in a dynamic situation. Of course, COVID-19 would have taught all of us that, because 2020 the department would have had its vision of the work we would want to do, and hey, by March, by the first week in April or the 29th of March, the director had to be making a presentation to the farmers. We need to do this now and get this intervention in, because for our food security, that wasn't a part of our agenda. And of course, we have to be dynamic and find new ways of trying to address our food security situation. I wouldn't say problem, but situation, and better providing wholesome and nutritious foods to our citizens.
Okay, how has the Department of Agriculture used technology? Because we're in an age of technology. How has the department used technology to advance the whole agricultural landscape here in St. Kitts?
Okay, I'll tell you a few things, and just to say that today's session, we've spoken a lot about the crop sector of the department. Hopefully, sometime in the future, we could look at marketing, and we could also look at the livestock sector. We just mentioned some livestock things, but we didn't really speak about the program in very detail, and similarly what we're doing in our plans for marketing. So those are things that we can look at subsequently. But as it relates to technology, for example, the same extension that we're talking about, we have a particular app. I don't remember the name of it offhand.
The Cobra Collect tool. Where sorry for the interjection. I think I could speak better on this than the director.
Go right ahead.
And then the director, because if it's right directly within my program,
and then I will
basically
speak about the livestock app after.
Because we see the need for data and driving policies. Data is what drives policies, and that is what our decision makers want to see. So we have developed. Well, we have not developed, but we are using an app that calls Cobra Collect. It allows the extension officers to give the data real time. So just trying to reference it, when they go out today, if they have data on their phone, as soon as they finish with Mr. Williams' farm, Mr. James, myself, the policy unit could see what Mr. Williams have at this very time.
Whatever they entered.
Yes.
Whatever entered. No longer that I have to, or the director and myself have to wait a month for them to compile the whole report and thing, so we're getting it real time, Mr. Williams. That is one of the technological advances we have made into our program this year, and I don't want to.
So what you call that smart agriculture?
It's part of
smart agriculture. Everything now smart.
Yeah, we're also using drones. Well,
we
don't own them.
We don't own them in collaboration with the Republic of China, and I don't want to.
Yeah,
I think I'm taking the director's spotlight in this aspect, so I will turn back to the director.
Right.
Well, we all share the information.
So you're using the smart agriculture.
Yes,
you are.
Yeah, and
what does it refer to? How would you define smart agriculture?
Well, I would say it's really using advanced technology to really guide your decisions. But we have begun, but there's so many more things that we should do, and we should be really making decisions based on the technology that we have, right? So it's early I mean, there are lots of other things that can happen. There are apps, there are programs that inform you about diseases.
Yes.
That informs you about pests. I mean, even for example, with the Taiwanese, they have weather stations again, which puts out real data. I mean, data in real time, right? So there are several things. There's a marketing program where we collect data and analyze them. Similarly with livestock, you go out in the field and there's a disease surveillance app, right? So there's several bits and pieces of technology that we have been adapting, but we need to bring it together. And again, it's technology used by the department, but we also want to be able to say that our farmers are the ones who are using the technology and who are making decisions.
So what you really want to do is to build an agriculture community.
Certainly.
And that is what you're interested in doing.
Yes, we're working even with the phytosanitary certificates. We have had training in e-phytos, right? So bits and pieces. Mr. Chapman spoke about the app out in the field with extension. Plant quarantine has, marketing has, and so we have several different apps. But we really need, I would like to see the farmers also going onto their smartphones or tablets or what have you, and making decisions based on the real-time data that they have. Not just us. Mm-hmm. We are the ones using it, but we also want to be able to equip them. I guess that's where our teaching and so on and our classes will come in, so that it really benefits us all, not just the department, but the farmers.
Yes.
And coupled to that, there are a couple of WhatsApp chats. Even that is a simple e-agriculture component that farmers are engaged in, and basically have technical persons from the department, from the Republic of China and Taiwan, and we share and we post information. It's information sharing that's basically using the smart devices, and not coupled to just using the smart devices. We will have also incorporating in some of the projects, like even decision making, as the director rightfully said, of the water component. And again, all that was included in crafting the project for today. They will be using devices that moisture retention meters that, hey, the moisture level you stick it in, the moisture level, you read the moisture level, and it tell you if it's time to irrigate, how long to irrigate, and those kind of things. And
yes.
Hydroponics, we going in that direction. The greenhouses, where they'll be equipped with the various technology that, hey, the pH is XYZ, you see that the nutrient needs to be, or the thing needs to be, solution needs to be adjusted to blah, 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 gives you the alert that it's doing the necessary thing to bring it back so that the plant can go to its full optimum potential. And so those are the directions where we are added. And of course, the whole e-agriculture platform and developing a whole e-commerce. We already have a website that is funded, market-led, that farmers could join that platform and advertise.
Okay, what is the website?
AgroPortal, www.agrofresh. Right? It's now a link in the government portal. Right? We got AICA's assistance some years ago to build that market.
Yes.
And it's still available. Again, we put up the items that we sell, but also we want farmers to have stores on it, so that instead of having to walk around or call around to the supermarkets, the supermarkets can go on that drop-down menu and see what is available.
Just similar to shopping like Amazon.
Quite a bit has been done. Well, as we call it our local Amazon. Quite a bit has been done about getting our farmers into technology, and we hope that they would embrace it in a bigger way.
Right. Right, gentlemen, we're out of time really, but before we go, what would you say, Director, were some of the greatest challenges faced to the agricultural sector in 2020?
Our challenges in 2020 were not unique to years before. I think we elaborated on some of them. The lady called passionately about the monkeys. They continue to be a big problem. And the several things being done about that. We have studies going on about their behavior and their crop preferences and how we can best manage them. It is a work in progress. We obviously are not there where people can feel the big impact. We ask for their patience, and we also suggest to them that in the meanwhile, do what you can to help yourself. Don't wait entirely on government. Water, we mentioned again as a big issue, which really concerns me a lot, because it's so difficult and so many people want water. But I think some of the other challenges really have to do with our farming style, or the amount of the difficulty with investment capital for farmers. Still, interest rates continue to be very high, and it continues to be difficult for farmers to access capital, and therefore they have to look to government a lot for concessions, for assistance, and that kind of thing, right? Those are some of the big challenges. I think the farmers' own background knowledge is also something very critical.
Yes.
We spoke about giving training. That is something we have to keep doing and even intensify. And markets obviously would be a next big thing. We need to be able to penetrate the supermarkets more. I think we need to do that before we consider about exports. People like to talk about exports, but there is quite a lot of space in the local market that we could take up before we even consider going outside. So the challenges, they have been with us for a while. You might want to talk about age, but we're seeing some movement there. Some younger persons are now showing an interest, especially in terms of non-field agriculture, protected structures, hydroponics, organoponics, that kind of thing. So yes, there are those challenges, but we're also optimistic because we're also seeing light. Government, as we said, there's, for the first time in my working time in agriculture, there is some degree of funds that you can use, the $3 million for agricultural development. And so I think if we use it wisely, you could set the pathway for great development. It may not revolutionize, but it will start the revolution. And I hope we utilize it properly and begin to have agriculture on a new and sound footing for the future.
Thank you, Mr. James. Mr. Chapman, do you have any parting words for us?
Well, at this time, I would like to thank you, the host, for having us here to educate the public of the agriculture and the initiatives that we have planned for 2021 and highlight the International Year of Fruits and Vegetables, as most people were not aware that as this year has been dubbed the International Year of Fruits and Vegetables. And I would again like to make a strong plug for buying local, supporting our local industry, because as they will say, a healthy nation is a wealthy nation. So basically, if you buy local and we can't continue to attribute the benefits of eating fresh fruits and vegetables, and I know we didn't really get to touch that, and I would always say, hopefully next time, or even one of this, we could even piggyback and have,
we know what the benefits are. The benefits, children's growth and development, of course. That is important to the development of children. You can speak about a longer life, better mental health, healthy heart, lower cancer risk, lower obesity risk, lower diabetes risk, better gut health, and so on. All of those are the benefits of really eating fruits and vegetables, and we really can go on.
And we could go on and on, but again, I would like to thank the general public for listening, and also even I wouldn't say there any negative comments. I would always use the comments for we as a challenge for we to overcome. So I would always welcome negative comments. I don't shy away from any, and I would thank all the persons who will call and give their support, whether negative or in the positive manner. It gives something for the department to work towards and have achievements. Of course, I'd always say, okay, that is what they say. let us overcome that and let our work speak for itself. So of course, when the lady would have said that we are not doing anything for backyard persons with the monkey control, I made a note of it, and to see how we could craft it into our project and see how we could assist even what you would say the non-commercial type farmer where the project is crafted for. And again, Mr. Williams, I will thank you for having us here.
Thank you very much.
I look forward to any opportunity here for we to build a platform and any way that we can educate our country.
Thank you very much, Mr. James, and thank you very much, Mr. Chapman, for being on today's program. I want to thank all of our listeners to today's program and our callers, those of you who called in and gave constructive criticism and gave your comments and your suggestions. Always, you're very welcome to do so. Next week, we will be back with another edition of Working for You. Until then, I am Les Roy Williams. Take good care.